Sweet.
And what I'll do as you move, I'll sit here and I'll try to keep the computer like.
Oh, you're gonna move the computer.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. But otherwise, we'll just start it. Did you want to do an opening statement? Do you want me to intro you?
I can intro myself.
Yes,
just be like,
I prefer we prefer to let you all intro yourselves. That's good. Otherwise, yeah, we got 5 minutes. And let's make it. We'll start at 1:05. And then that
Yeah.
City. When you start to move, I'll move with you.
Yeah, and now I'm here to learn about women in STEM because that is my favorite thing in the world.
oh, you should have come play with me.
What? Like 6 weeks ago. Now I feel like a terrible person.
I can no, but I can do it like seriously like anytime.
Were you at like the club?
Or I was in the auditorium.
Oh,
like right downstairs and maybe the first week of March.
Yeah, where was it was
February?
because I missed that too. It was with Women in STEM, I think Empower too, right?
Oh
yeah. But I can do it, like I can seriously do it anytime.
Today, Rihanna, is more about identifying
your strength,
your value, your skills.
I think that's also very important.
Right.
So excited for that as well. Yeah, I have not been able to go to the past few Women in STEM meetings because I just like other things.
Busy.
Come up. I was a lot in school.
Busy, yeah.
Besides a retake of other things, it's schedule didn't line up. But I'm going tomorrow.
I'm like happy to come back anytime.
Good to know.
It was well received, so we're happy to have you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna be facilitating the discussion.
Yeah, you can ask me anything.
So we on the Zoom line. We're about we are, but not really. Obviously, this is
this is a long break, isn't it?
yeah, 1:45. This is identifying your skills, strengths, and values.
I was picturing a 15-minute break.
No, this is 45.
I don't know my skills.
2 minutes.
So,
Congrats.
what do you do specifically in the healthcare industry?
So I do 2 things these days, but there's like a whole journey that I can talk through. So I'm a partner at a bunch of different private equity and venture funds. So I help them decide what's the space we're looking at, what's the company, and then who should run the company. That's like 50% of my time. And the other 50% of my time, I'm a board member for public and private healthcare tech companies.
Healthcare tech companies.
So healthcare tech companies would be like devices that can monitor.
So like biomedical engineering.
Kind of, but like I'm not a hardcore. I told the Women in STEM, my STEM career stopped when I decided not to go to MIT. Like I'm not a true STEM person. I'm more like a healthcare and tech person together, but I'm not the one who really conceptualizes the innovation. Like I don't have the hardcore technical skills to do it.
That's literally exactly like I'm that person because I'm the person that will be there and know how the stuff works and I'll manage everyone and I'll know like what to allocate to where, but I'm not actually doing the work.
Well, and like thankfully Women in STEM didn't throw me out. When I said that,
Yeah.
I think like the skill set of what you're describing, which is awesome, increasingly more value.
Yeah. Especially with like AI and
Yeah.
So what I'm going to be studying is information systems, which sounds really boring, but it's like basically computer science and business. But I'm basically learning the business of engineering.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you.
I'm so excited.
Did you apply there early or regular?
Yeah.
Early.
I've been done for a while.
Okay. For those of you on Zoom, you hear the activity in the background. We're gonna get started, although it'll be very informal today. We have I can only say a treat, an honor, an esteemed guest. I will be acting both as a moderator in the sense that we'll try to get the discussion going, even though I do not anticipate needing to do much moderating. And as videographer, as I capture Dr. Hilu as she walks around and engages with this packed audience of young student, vibrant students coming back from spring break. No, but in all seriousness, we're doing this not only for current students, but our current Zoom students as well. With that being said, I don't even need to intro her. She can intro herself. With that being said, Dr. Hilu, the floor is yours.
I will do my best to be on the screen and then talking to.
I got you. See?
Hey guys.
I'm on.
We're gonna make this pretty informal. You guys can jump in with any questions. But so I'm Karoline Hilu. I spend my time after having started a bunch of healthcare tech companies, now working 50% as a partner in different private equity funds, and then 50% doing board work for healthcare tech companies of all sizes, like tiny innovation companies and public companies. I love what I do. My background is mixed in the sense that I come out of medicine, but have also done a bunch of stuff in business. And I want to really talk to you guys about how it is that I got to this point and how I figured out, like, to make it work. You know, like, what is my real strength and what can I enjoy doing for the rest of my life? Because once, and the old people are laughing, once you hit 45 and up, if you don't have a true passion for what you're doing, it's going to be really hard to keep going. So my hope is you come out of this session at least knowing how to think about what is it that I enjoy doing that I could do for a long time.
Good. I guess I'll start. So you gave us a brief synopsis overview of what you do. How did you get there?
Yeah. So I'll give you the 10 seconds of how it is that I got that job, but then I'll go back to, you know, how is it that I really got there? The reason that I got the jobs that I have today is primarily because I started a bunch of healthcare tech companies, and as an operator running these companies, began to understand what makes companies successful. Like, how do companies, what's the idea? How does the company grow? And what would make a good investment? But that is a 5-second answer. That is not the real answer to how did you get to where you are today. And so it's only really recently that I've thought and had kind of this space of mind and even vague maturity to think, like, what really influenced me. And I think that the truth of what influenced me, and we've had a bunch of different conversations about this, is I grew up in Poland while Poland was still a communist country under Russia. And all of this is like, as you're listening to me, like, is she for real? It's for real. And my parents lived out of the country trying to earn money. It was called the white slave trade, where educated people would leave Eastern Europe to go work in Western Europe, leave their families behind. And the person who raised me was my grandmother's sister, who was an Auschwitz survivor. And that is 1,000% of what has shaped me and how I think about the world and who I am. Because the person who raised me endured this thing that really shaped the way that I view kind of strength and resilience and injustice, and really colors everything that I've ever done. So that's the real answer, I think, like, why I do what I do even remotely well is because of this person who invested a decade of her time to walk me through these experiences. And so what the heck do I mean by that? And I know this is on Zoom and very personal, but I don't want it to be sterile because I think sterile is not helpful. So I will be very candid. So what I mean by that is the guidance that she would give me, and this is like a paradigm thing, so important, is you have to have the will to survive and endure. Like, that was the whole paradigm growing up. And I always thought to myself, probably when I was a little bit younger than you guys, like, I'm a super weak person, I'm lazy, but I would think, but how is it that I could think anything is hard when people have endured such things. And so that paradigm of gratitude and how could I think that this is hard when it is really so petty to think that is hard is like the only reason that I've really been able to, I think, be successful in settings that are hard, like investment banking or medical school, because I would feel this great sense of privilege to even be there in the first place, rather than, you know, the multitude of horrible things that could be happening to mankind. And that I think is the real answer. Like it all, and this isn't a haughty statement, but it all starts with the paradigm that you kind of approach your life with. It cannot be hard. You cannot be suffering. You have to find joy and interest in what you're doing, or you're going to hate it and you're not going to be good at it. And so that made me, I think, into the person that I am, for better and for worse, and shaped me. And the strength, this is, I think, the most interesting question of the day. My only strength, like truly my only strength, and this is what I told women in STEM, like I have almost 0 STEM qualifications, but my only strength, with a long time to figure out, is really reading people. So growing up in that situation where someone had endured so much, she would describe to me, like, here's how you figure out what another person really wants and if they're being sincere, and how you can hide or how you cannot hide to just survive. And like she would go on and on about it. And I was a little child thinking, this is so horrible. I don't want to hear this, but it obviously resonated. And what I do almost 100% of the time, and I kid you guys not, is really evaluating CEOs telling me things and thinking, are you being truthful? Why are you motivated to have this job? And where is your space really going? And that strength of reading people is the only thing I do well, but I've managed to translate it into this career that on paper looks impressive, but really is just this thing over and over and over again.
So I don't want to interrupt. I just want to add one note. We are doing this today in conjunction with the venerable Rob Levin in his Business of Life class, and he'll be chiming in, though I know you have to leave early to prepare for TBOL next period. My question is the paradigm. How do you, we're here to identify our values, strengths, and skills. Like, where do we seek it? How do we recognize it? Is it something that we can develop, or is it something that we have to, that exists on some level and we have to know how to look for it and find it?
That's a great, there's no wrong answer to that question. But my 2 cents is you are sitting on your greatest strength, but you have to figure out how to hone it, and you have to figure out how to apply it to whatever setting. If it's, you know, art, for-profit businesses, science, you have to think about, like, how do I do it? I had no idea that this was my strength until PE funds started calling me like maybe 2-3 years ago and saying, can you just fly somewhere and meet the CEO and tell us what you think?
You're not anchored here, Doc. I know you want to walk around. I got you.
There must be a reason that, like, there's something in that interaction where I can say this person's sincere or not sincere. And so I guarantee you guys, like, you probably already at this point have a sense of what it is that's your strength. But I think what people struggle with is pressure from their peers or their parents about what the strength should be. Like in my family, more STEMmy people, I'm pretty sure I was expected to get a PhD in math, and that was not my area of passion. And so there's this like tension. Do I really want to pursue this? What am I expected to be good at? And I think at the end of the day, the joke is really on those externalities, because by the time you're 40, you're going to be doing that thing, I hope, that you love and honing that strength, even if today it's a struggle or you don't know what it is. But I would say you're already sitting on your greatest strength, but the honesty and reflection and honing is what needs to happen between now and my old age.
You want to go, Martin?
Well, I just wanted to say here on that, but also isn't it interesting that your superpower, you didn't label it this, but your BS detector
My BS detector.
is something that AI is probably still years away from being good at. That you can have, I'm looking over at Kai, you can have all sorts of tools, foreign tools, AI tools for investments and all that. But eventually you're investing in people. And it's hard to run that through an algorithm.
It's hard. And maybe one funny story I'll give you guys. This is women in business activists when I was speaking to them. The moment that I first realized that this was a skill was at the University of Chicago in business school. They had a case study competition, and there were very few women always. And so I was paired off with 5 guys who had come out of banking, like very smart, very quantitative finance guys. And the case study was companies presenting to us. And then you go into a room, closed doors, and try to evaluate the valuation of the company. Would you buy the company and at what value? And so we're sitting there, and I don't know, 27. And imagine this, right? So I'm young, these people are very experienced, and they're working very hard building models that I can only partially build. And I kicked my feet up on the table and I said, you guys are a bunch of morons. Don't you realize these books are cooked and this management team is just lying to us? Like, the point of the case is to go out there and say, this is a fraudulent company that we might acquire. And I said this in very colorful, inappropriate language, like with my feet on the table. And what I didn't realize is that the point, and this is words from the wise, the point of the competition was that the judges had a camera watching us in the room and heard all of this. And so I won the case study competition, like me as an individual, and got my first job in venture capital.
Wow.
And that was not the intent. It was just like, like, you're lying. Don't you guys see this? And so the AI question, like, how do you make decisions? How do you read people? That is an enduring strength, to Rob's point. And that's kind of how I went down the path of, like, who's on the team? What are they saying? What's really authentic about this? And it was just a great, running joke. Like, even at U Chicago doing quantitative finance, like, those skills really matter. And I was petrified and embarrassed when they played this up in front of like the whole audience, but that really happened.
When they take the confidence to be contrarian and the courage,
those are nice ways.
Especially if you're in the room, to not step up and put your feet up and be contrarian.
Be contrarian and trust your judgment. Sometimes it may be more public than you realize. But that's maybe to the point, and like, when did you realize? I probably didn't realize until much later, like in my late to mid 20s, that this reading of the thing really mattered. Down a path that was very different than what I expected.
I don't want to take. I obviously have questions, guess points I want to hit. So, as you go through this, we're in business school now. We started kind of sort of from today and went backwards, and then we're working our way. Is this something that, if you're Rian or if you're Kai, like, can you visualize this? Can you see, like, in 15 years, if this is my MO, to be contrarian, to challenge the status quo, I can be here? Or is this something where things just kind of sort of have to happen and you kind of sort of take the learned knowledge, the core skills, the core passion that you have and apply it to where you want to go?
Yeah. So my answer is probably just a partial answer, but I would say, I think you have to be really open. And in the few students who have reached out to me, either via Rob or others, I've always gotten the sense that we need to know the next step, and we don't need to know the next step. Like, it doesn't have to. If you look at my career, it's been so non-linear and joyfully so, and then led to this really interesting job, which is really a calling. And it's because I've given myself the freedom to say, it doesn't have to be school X. And the paper is misleading, right? These schools look really impressive, but that was not the intent, like I was a poor kid in the middle of getting deported, applying to college, not thinking like, I need to go to this school, but just like, can I even stay in the country? It was a more pressing issue. And it happened to work out that some good schools took an interest in me, but not because I was laser focused. It was because I was just kind of living my life and pursuing my interests. And so to Kwai's question, it's really be open because it will come together. Like it will absolutely come together for you, especially based on the caliber of the people that I've met here. And you're going to be much richer for giving yourself the freedom to explore different things in a nonlinear way, because ultimately, all the interesting jobs in today's economy are interdisciplinary. There are much fewer of these, like, I need to know my trade jobs, and much more, how do I think about the system? How do I influence and motivate people? And that is a totally nonlinear pathway. You've got to have skills like how to manage people, how to be technical in an adequate way, and how do you think creatively? And that's kind of all over the place. The other really good question that I was sent was, do you set goals?
Yeah.
And I will be the first person to tell you that I know I'm in the minority, but I've never set a goal in my life because I've allowed myself to kind of think like, what's the next interesting thing? And that freedom has led to a lot of creative pursuits. The companies that I'm involved with are really different. I've been very, very fortunate to be offered full-time partner roles at these investment funds, and I always turn them down because I don't want anyone to dictate what I'm working on. I would much rather have the capacity to take a call from a young company that has an interesting team and an interesting problem and be able to help them than, because of managing conflicts of interest, having to decline everything and just work on what the fund is working on. And that's a huge trade-off. Most people would choose the certainty, but I like this freedom. And I think that's what makes me like a fit for an entrepreneurial environment. I want to be able to catch my fate, but I've loved doing it. So be open. And then I had a great conversation with Jordan Church before this meeting, and his words of wisdom, because I want to give credit where credit is due. And I cannot agree more with this. Even in this remaining time that you guys have at Harvard Westlake, go out and meet people beyond your core group, and do not ascribe value to groups or to people. Everything that I do is intrinsically based on working with very different people all around the world, like tech teams in India and the Ukraine, investment people in Zurich, people on the East Coast that are very different from people on the, Rob and I joke about this, my calls are like at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. You have to have the fluidity to be able to work across these groups and to work well with people whose skills are completely different from yours, because that's what makes a great team. And so if you're thinking, and I'm not saying that you guys are, but sometimes in high school, like he or she's cool, I need to be at that event with these people on Instagram. Like, no, that is a shallow, very short-term game. Go out of your comfort zone and learn now how to work with different people.
Any kinds of role models or mentors or anybody that you can think of personally, or maybe some of our students want to look out for?
Yeah. Again, this is living up to the promise if I'm not going to give you a sterile answer. So I do not listen to podcasts. That was one of the other questions. Like, what do you think from women in business? What podcasts? No. I watch Peaky Blinders. I love The Last Kingdom. The Wire is like the Bible. And so my role models have always been these characters that like pursue a true north and are totally irreverent. Like they don't care what the crowd is thinking. They're going to go chase that idea. They're going to do that thing. They don't care about their friends, their parents, respectfully. But that is my role model. My role model is kind of the epitome of that person. And I can tell you that in college, I had a life-size cutout of Daniel Day-Lewis from Last of the Mohicans. And my roommate asked me, do you want to date Daniel Day-Lewis? And I said, no, damn it. I want to be Daniel Day-Lewis. Like the essence of the role model for me is that thing. And I think I test women in business with this. As you're going home tonight, think, who is my existential role model? One, because that's a good exercise, but two, because you'll find it revealing about yourself. Like, what is the set of qualities that you value? And then walk it back to your strength, right? My strength is kind of being this like quirky, eccentric person who does her own thing, but your role model should reflect that. And then as a bonus point, if you guys want to ever tell your friends, every single person I interview for college, because I love interviewing for college for my school, I asked.
We talked about that.
Yeah, the question I've asked the last 25 years is, if you were a movie or a book character, who would you be and why? And I've had such awesome answers from the Harvard Westlake community. I've also had people say, I need 5 minutes to think about this. Can I get back to you? I've had great answers, but that question of what do you get excited about is inherently what do you want to do in your life?
Ruth Gordon's character, Harold and Maude.
Rob Levin, true to himself. But that, I could be Stringer Bell in The Wire, and knowing that is really, really important. We've talked about that.
Yes, we have. We got about 3 minutes, and then we'll open it up to students and faculty that are here. I guess how can I put this? Harvard Westlake is a different place. You've obviously worked, you've attended some of the premier elite institutions in the world, and Harvard Westlake, I consider them to be one of them. You talked about the joke ended up being on the externalities, which I think is great, right? But it's tough being in high school and trying to figure out who you are, the essence of yourself. Any tips or any kinds of tricks or guides or anything for our students who are trying to navigate that path, to figure out who it is they are outside of what everybody else is doing?
And this answer just kind of came to me, and maybe it's inappropriate. I think navigating that answer, you can get to a truthful answer if you tell yourself, I'm not relying on anyone else. If my parents were not paying for this, or if I weren't getting this grant, if I had to hold my own weight, what would I be doing? Gives you a certain amount of freedom and accountability, right? Maybe the worst crime that you could commit is taking money or funding from someone else without the heart of really pursuing that thing. And you could quote me to your families on that, but you could say, hey, this old woman came and said, it's actually really wrong to take your money and study field X, in which I have no interest and no desire to pursue a career, because we're throwing that away. And think about anyone who might be funding a scholarship or a grant in the same way. You're accountable for this decision that you make. And maybe my view is a little more harsh. I think of you guys as adults. To me, anyone over the age of 15 is really in the driver's seat in Europe. But here, we help a lot and we move along the way, but you guys are accountable and you should be driving your future. And if you are really, really in a bind, then at least do a double major and pursue that other thing that you want to pursue. But soon enough, it will come out, and you want to have the integrity of pursuing your dream and also thinking about who the heck is paying for all this time. And maybe I'm taking the spot of somebody who truly in earnest wants to pursue this field. So harsh view.
Ryan, you're probably, I talked a little bit about that TBOL first semester, right? How you all, because of the privilege, whether it be socioeconomically or academically, you're cheating the world if you aren't pursuing the passion, right? What you want to do, you're doing what others are doing. With that said, we got about 10 minutes left. I'd love for questions from the audience before we close down. Anything that anybody can think of, want to ask?
Anything is fair game. Yeah.
Oh, do you identify yourself for the Zoom?
No pressure.
I'm Hanson, I'm a 10th grader. I was wondering, you talked about how you see a lot of like an entrepreneurship journey as like non-linear, like it's all over the place. And I was just wondering for like when you were in high school, was your high school journey also reflective of that? Or like where did you stay more consistent to something throughout?
So my high school was not at all reflective of that. I went to an international Catholic high school that was European on the East Coast, where it was so structured and there was like zero flexibility to think creatively, which is another kind of joke is on me that like you will find your true strength even if the system you're in constrains you. So I would say there should be no limit to what you can achieve, even if your environment isn't that way. I mean, again, and I'll answer your question in more detail, but just for me, that driving paradigm is so many people have endured such terrible things, and there is no excuse for excuses, complacency, lack of creativity, and everything we have is such a privilege. And I think just be trying to find every opportunity to be out of the box, to express yourself individually, your strengths, your creativity, take massive risks. We've created this mental system where everything is really driven by college admissions and like taking risk is almost punished. And that is wrong. The real world does not work like that. In the real world, taking risk is the name of the game. Like who you marry, you have kids, where do you live? Like these are big decisions. And if we don't take micro decisions now and little risks, then it becomes very hard for us to learn how to make bigger decisions. So run to the risk, don't shy away from risk. And you might be surprised by the outcomes and how it feels to be in a rationally risky environment. Great question.
Anybody else?
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you like work all over the world and like partner with a lot of different organizations.
Yeah.
Do you like live in LA and do that, or do you stay on the East Coast, or and how do those partnerships work, and like how do you maintain the innovation?
Okay, so that is an awesome question, and I will give you even on Zoom the very candid answer that I gave women in STEM. So I live in LA, but I travel 60 to 80% of the time, or I work with people around the world. It is hard to do that as a woman because I have a child. And so one of the things, and we had this huge, amazing conversation, women in business and STEM about this. One of the biggest challenges is in Europe, there is a massive social infrastructure for childcare. In the US, there is nothing. And so the most talented women that I know have often left the workforce. And so as, think of me as like the person who's thinking ahead. So I see this happening. I'm in my 20s. And all I'm thinking is like, this cannot happen to me, especially in finance. If you take time off, you're done. And so I saved every bit of money that I had so that when I was ready to have my child, when I was old, I was able to force my parents into retirement and could buy a very small condo for them in LA. And so we've had the great conversation of, I planned like 15 years in advance to finance childcare for my only child so that I can work full time, travel, and not have the sense of guilt or being torn about what I do. And so that was an awesome conversation that I probably wish we had taken women in STEM and women in business, because, and especially for men too these days, I do not want you guys to have to make those trade-offs. The balancing you have to plan for decades in advance. And I'm happy to have any conversation about it because I want it to be possible for anyone in this room to work wherever they want, to travel, and to not feel like I can't do this.
We got one student left who hasn't asked a question, who ironically, I see the most of you in him. Kai.
Hey, Kai.
Well,
So true.
Right?
about interdisciplinary, applying, like in your work, being interdisciplinary. And I think a lot of kids, especially at Harvard Westlake, are looking into internships, some because they wanted to look at on college apps, some because
Yeah,
they want to do some of both. But what do you think about just going for whatever you can get and just trying to gain different experiences, even if it's not necessarily what you think you love, but just so you get experience in a field that you're not necessarily familiar with?
that's such a good question. So I think there are a couple of things that could make an experience worthwhile. And you named a couple of them already. One, this is something I've never seen or I'm unlikely to see again. I want to get visibility. So the best example of that is I've heard people kind of watching in the operating room. And I actually had someone tell me, I realized that I can't go into medicine because I pass out once the scalpel. I was like, that is a very good, like,
There you go.
good to know now.
It's not for me.
But yeah, so, like, audit it early. Two, I love the internships where you're seeing like real work. Like if we could all work at a gas station cleaning the toilets, we would be much better people because we would understand what real work is and what doing things that we don't like means. So real work has value. That's what my son's going to be doing. Like I'm not joking.
Yeah.
And then three, the other place that I would say is I don't care what you're doing, but if you have a mentor who's going to invest in you and talk to you, that is invaluable. Like someone who's in a field that you may have an interest in, who's going to tell you, this was my journey, or why don't you do this project with me, or come to this meeting in a way that you guys have had access to. Those things are awesome. A lot of my internships were unpaid internships where I just met someone who I thought was inspiring and they let me watch them work and kind of talk to me about their work. And then they created role models for little steps that I could never see in my community or my family. So yes to all of the above. But like when you choose it, think like, what is the reason? And is there real value here? Forget about the resume. Your interviewer at any college is going to figure out in 5 seconds if you had any interest in any of these jobs. I promise you.
Anyone else want to drink from this fountain of wisdom and experience and insight? No? Well, you guys get to.
Yeah.
What's your plan after this?
I don't have a plan. I'm
There you
free
go.
after this.
There we go.
Like, would you spare maybe 15, 20 to talk to our entrepreneurship class?
Yeah,
Hands
I'd be
in the
happy
class,
to.
but,
If you're willing to
I
listen to
texted
me.
you, or I don't teach the class, but I texted
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
said, I'm bringing.
I'm happy to. I mean, you guys, I'm happy to like from the women in STEM and women in biz meetings, like you can email me anytime. I'm on the HWorks network.
Mhm.
If a year from now you're thinking about a bunch of different choices, I'm happy to just help you brainstorm or consider the trade-offs. I wish I had that person and I would love to be your person.
Is that okay with you?
Of course. I think you already done T-ball, right? You've already been T-balled, so you've got to do catalyzing change.
Yes.
All right. With that being said, that was Dr. Carol, everybody in Zoom. This will be available before midnight tonight in the resources section on the HW Works platform. Dr. Hilu, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cousin.
And I'm going to try to duck into catalyzing change also. I've got to see one of our parents at
Yeah,
T-ball, and I'm going to try to
Of
get to what
course.
you have to say,
I
catalyzing
hope
change also.
the candor was.
Oh, it will work. This will be fantastic.